Welcome back. I'm glad you decided to join me tonight. You might want to dim the lights, pull the blanket up a little tighter, and perhaps most importantly, make sure your front door is actually locked before we begin. Tonight's story is a chilling reminder that the scariest monsters aren't always hiding under the bed. Sometimes they're right next door, mowing the lawn and smiling as they wave hello. It's a long journey into the dark side of suburbia, so get comfortable and steel your nerves. You're in for a terrifying ride. The ink was barely dry on the closing papers when we moved in. It was late 2021, the world was slowly waking up from the collective hibernation of the pandemic, and for Gabi and me, this house represented everything we had been working toward. My name is Noah. Gabi, my fiancée then, my wife now, stood on the front lawn of that two-story colonial in a quiet, leafy suburb, looking at the facade with tears in her eyes. It was perfect. It had a porch for evening coffees, a yard that smelled of fresh pine mulch, and enough bedrooms for the family we desperately wanted to start. We were looking for peace. We were looking for the American dream. We had no idea we were moving next door to a nightmare. The neighborhood was the kind of place where people actually mowed their lawns on diagonals and put their trash bins away within an hour of the garbage truck passing. It was aggressively normal. During those first few days of unpacking, an endless parade of cardboard boxes and bubble wrap, we met several neighbors. They were all polite, offering generic welcomes and advice on which local pizza place was the best. But it was the couple to our right, Daniel and Veronica, who made the biggest impression. I remember the day clearly. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon. The golden hour sun was hitting the siding of our house, casting long shadows across the driveway. Gabi and I were wrestling a heavy sectional sofa through the front door when they walked over. They looked like a casting director's idea of a perfect suburban couple. Daniel was tall, with the kind of broad shoulders that suggested he spent time at the gym, and a firm, confident handshake. He was in his late 30s, clean-shaven, wearing a polo tucked into khakis. Veronica was petite, with a warm, bubbling energy and a smile that reached her eyes. "Welcome to the neighborhood," Veronica had said, her voice melodic. In her hands, she held a Tupperware container. "I know moving is hell, so we brought you a little sugar rush to get you through the unpacking." It was a red velvet cake, homemade. We took a break right then and there, standing in our half-empty kitchen, eating cake off paper plates with our new neighbors. The cake was incredible, moist, with a rich cream cheese frosting that Gabi couldn't stop raving about. We talked for an hour. We learned Daniel worked in finance and Veronica was a freelance graphic designer. They asked about our wedding plans. They joked about the HOA. They were charming, attentive, and painfully nice. When they left, Gabi leaned against the counter and sighed. "We really lucked out," she said. "They seem like such sweet people." "Yeah," I agreed, finishing the last crumb of the cake. "Salt of the earth." The first 2 weeks were idyllic. We settled into a rhythm. I'd leave for work, Gabi would work from home, and the evenings were spent painting walls and arranging furniture. The neighborhood was quiet, a blanket of silence that settled over the street as soon as the sun went down. But silence has a way of amplifying sound. The first crack in the facade appeared on a Tuesday night, roughly 3 weeks after we moved in. It was late 11 p.m. I was in the master bedroom, which faced the side of Daniel and Veronica's house. I was just about to drift off when a noise cut through the darkness. It wasn't the ambient noise of traffic or wind. It was sharp, human, and angry. I sat up, sliding to the edge of the bed, and peered through the blinds. The window was slightly ajar to let in the cool autumn air. "You're pathetic," a male voice, muffled, but the rage was unmistakable. Then a crashing sound, like a plate hitting a wall. "Stop it, please, just stop!" A female voice, Veronica. She sounded desperate, her voice cracking in a way that made the hair on my arms stand up. I couldn't see into their house, the angle was wrong, and their blinds were drawn tight, but the shadows danced frantically against their window shades. A few moments later, The front door of their house flew open. Veronica stormed out, her silhouette illuminated by the amber glow of the street lamp. She was clutching her purse, her head down. She practically ran to her car, fumbled with the keys, and peeled out of the driveway, tires screeching against the asphalt. The street fell silent again. I went back to bed, but I didn't sleep. I told Gabi about it the next morning over coffee. "Maybe they're just stressed," Gabi said, though she looked concerned. "Couples fight. Maybe it was a one-time thing. They seem so composed." "It sounded bad, Gab, like really bad," I said. "Well, she left to cool off," she reasoned. "That's probably healthy, better than staying and escalating it." We chalked it up to a bad night. We wanted to believe the best of people. We wanted to believe the red velvet cake was the truth and the argument was the anomaly. We were wrong. Later that week, on a Thursday, Gabi and I were returning from a grocery run. As we pulled into the driveway, the sound hit us before we even opened the car doors. It was midday, maybe 4 p.m. Their main front door was wide open, leaving only the glass storm door closed. The yelling was visceral. "I told you not to touch that," Daniel's voice was booming. "I didn't! I swear I didn't!" Veronica was crying now. Gabi froze, her hand on the car door handle. We looked at each other. It felt voyeuristic, invasive, but we couldn't help hearing it. It wasn't just an argument, it was a verbal assault. The venom in his voice was terrifying. "Let's just go inside," Gabi whispered, her face pale. We hurried into our house, locking the door behind us. We tried to ignore it, turning on the TV, focusing on our dinner, but the illusion of the perfect neighbors was shattering. We stopped waving when we saw them outside. We started avoiding the right side of the yard. Then, the silence came. It started on a Monday. I noticed Veronica's car, a silver sedan, wasn't in the driveway. It was unusual for her to be out, but by Wednesday, it still hadn't returned. Daniel's car was there, he was there, but the silver sedan was gone. "Maybe she finally left him," Gabi suggested one evening as we watched the news. "After that last fight, I wouldn't blame her." "Maybe, but where? She didn't take any bags that I saw. She could have left while we were at work." A week passed, then 2. The atmosphere around their house shifted. The blinds, which used to be opened every morning to let in the sun, remained drawn 24/7. The lawn, usually manicured to perfection, began to look a little shaggy. And Daniel changed. I saw him a few times taking out the trash or checking the mail. The confident, polo-wearing finance guy was gone. In his place was a man who looked like he hadn't slept in days. He wore sweatpants and stained t-shirts. He was unshaven, his eyes darting around nervously. Every time our paths crossed, he acted like a frightened animal. "Hey, Daniel," I called out once, trying to be neighborly, trying to fish for information. He flinched. He literally jumped, dropping a piece of junk mail. He scrambled to pick it up, muttered a quick, "Hey Noah, got a busy day, gotta run," and practically sprinted back into his house, slamming the door. My gut was twisting. A primal instinct, something ancient and warning, was screaming at me that something was wrong. "He's acting like he's guilty of something," I told Gabi 3 weeks after Veronica's disappearance. "Don't start," she said, though I could see the worry in her eyes too. "You watch too many crime documentaries. Gabi, nobody leaves without their car for 3 weeks without a word, and he's acting paranoid." "It's not our business, Noah. If we get involved and we're wrong, we have to live next to them for the next 20 years. Imagine the awkwardness. And if we're right, and we did nothing?" That question hung in the air between us. The breaking point came on a humid Tuesday evening. The air was thick, threatening a storm. I had been watching Daniel's house from my office window. He hadn't left the house in 3 days. "I'm going over there," I announced, standing up. "No, it don't," Gabi pleaded. "Just leave it alone." "I can't. I just want to ask how she is. If he gives me a straight answer, I'll drop it. I promise." I walked out the front door before she could stop me. The walk across the 20 feet of lawn separating our driveways felt like crossing a desert.
The silence of the neighborhood felt heavy, oppressive. I walked up his porch steps. There were dead leaves piled in the corner that hadn't been swept away. I pressed the doorbell. Ding dong! The sound echoed inside, but no movement followed. I waited. I knew he was home. His car was in the driveway, and I had seen a light flicker upstairs earlier. I rang it again. Nothing. I was about to turn around, feeling foolish, when I heard the lock tumble. The door cracked open a few inches. Daniel's face appeared in the gap. He looked terrible. His skin was pasty and gray, glistening with a sheen of sweat that didn't match the cool evening temperature. His eyes were red-shot, surrounded by dark, bruised circles. He forced a smile, but it was a rictus of tension, showing too many teeth. "Noah," he said. His voice was breathless, high-pitched. "What can I do for you?" "Hey, Daniel," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Sorry to bother you. We haven't seen Veronica in a while. Gabby and I were getting worried. We wanted to make sure everything is okay." He didn't open the door further. He used his body to block the view into the hallway. "Oh, yeah, no, everything's fine," he stammered, speaking a mile a minute. She actually had to go out of state. Her mom in Ohio. Yeah, Ohio. Her mom got really sick. Very sudden. Veronica drove up there to take care of her." "Ohio?" I asked. "I thought she mentioned her parents lived in Florida." He blinked rapidly. "Did she? Oh, right. They moved recently to Ohio. Anyway, she's there, taking care of business." "I see," I said. I didn't believe a word of it. The sweat was dripping down his temple now. "And you, man? You all right? You look like you've been running a marathon." He laughed, a sharp barking sound that had no humor in it. "Me? Yeah, just workouts. P90X, you know, trying to stay in shape while the wife is away. Upstairs, intense cardio." "Right," I said. I was about to say goodbye, to retreat, and figure out my next move when it happened. From deep inside the house, not from the upstairs where he claimed to be working out, but from somewhere below, maybe the back of the house, a sound pierced the air. It was a scream. It wasn't a movie scream. It wasn't melodramatic. It was a short, sharp shriek of pure agony, followed immediately by a heavy thud, like something striking the floor. My heart hammered against my ribs. The world seemed to slow down. "What was that?" I asked, my voice dropping an octave. Daniel's eyes widened. For a split second, the mask slipped, and I saw pure, unadulterated panic. Then the mask slammed back into place. "Movie," he blurted. "I was watching a movie upstairs, forgot to pause it. An action movie, lots of screaming, you know how it is." "You said you were working out, and that sound came from downstairs." "Workout video with a movie on, multitasking," he said, his words tripping over each other. He began to close the door. "Look, Noah, I'm right in the middle of a set. I really gotta go. Thanks for checking in." He slammed the door in my face. I heard the deadbolt slide home instantly. I stood on the porch for 3 seconds, frozen. That scream. It was real. I knew it was real. I turned and walked back to my house. I didn't run. I didn't want him to see me panic, but I walked fast. I burst through the front door and locked it. "Noah?" Gabby was in the hallway. "What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Call 911, I said, grabbing my phone. "Now." "What? Why?" "I heard her. I heard someone screaming in there." "He's lying, Gabby. She's not in Ohio. She's in that house." I dialed the police. My hands were shaking so hard I mistyped the number the first time. When the dispatcher answered, I tried to keep my voice steady. "I need to report a domestic disturbance, possibly a hostage situation. I need a welfare check immediately." I gave the address. I told them about the disappearance, the lies, the sweat, and the scream. "I want to remain anonymous," I added, though I knew it was futile. Daniel knew exactly who was calling. "Just please, hurry." The next 10 minutes were the longest of my life. Gabby and I stood by our living room window, peering through the slat of the curtains. Daniel's house was dark, silent, like a tomb. Then the blue lights washed over the neighborhood. It wasn't just one car. It was a swarm. 4 cruisers and an ambulance. They cut their sirens as they approached, but the lights were blinding. We watched as the officers approached the door. They pounded on it, no answer. They pounded again, shouting, "Police, open up!" Minutes passed. I saw officers moving around the side of the house, flashlights cutting through the gloom. Then the front door opened. We couldn't hear what was said, but the body language changed instantly. Officers drew their weapons. They swarmed inside. "Oh my God," Gabby whispered, gripping my arm. 5 minutes later, Daniel was let out. He was in handcuffs. He wasn't wearing the shirt he had answered the door in. He was shirtless, and even from this distance, I could see red smears on his chest and hands. He wasn't fighting them, but he wasn't walking willingly either. He looked defeated, hollow. Then came the stretcher. Paramedics rushed into the house with a gurney. When they came out, they were running. They were doing CPR on the person strapped to it. It was Veronica. She was pale, ghostly white, covered in blood-soaked towels. I felt like I was going to throw up. We stepped out onto our porch. The entire neighborhood was out now, standing in driveways in bathrobes, watching the tragedy unfold. As the police led Daniel toward a cruiser parked near the edge of the driveway, he stopped. The officer tried to push him forward, but Daniel planted his feet. He turned his head and looked directly at me. His eyes were dead. There was no anger, just a cold, flat promise. "I know it was you who snitched on me, Noah. You'll regret this." The officer shoved him into the back of the car and slammed the door. We spent the rest of the night giving statements. We found out the truth in pieces over the next few days. It was worse than we could have imagined. Daniel hadn't just been abusive, he was a monster. He had been keeping Veronica prisoner in the basement, a finished basement I didn't even know the house had, for 3 weeks. He had sold her car to a We Buy Cars for Cash place 2 towns over to stage her leaving. He had been starving her, beating her. When I rang the doorbell, he was downstairs. He told her if she made a sound, he would kill her. But when he went up to answer the door, she tried to scream for help. That was the sound I heard. He went back down after I left. Because she had screamed, he stabbed her 5 times. Veronica died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. She never regained consciousness. The neighborhood was never the same. The house next door became a black hole. People walked on the other side of the street to avoid it. Gabby and I tried to go back to normal, but how do you return to normal when you know a woman was tortured and murdered 20 feet from where you sleep? We attended the funeral. We sent flowers to her parents, who lived in Oregon, not Ohio. We tried to heal. But Daniel's words stuck with me. "You'll regret this." Fast forward a couple of months. The trial preparation was underway. Daniel was being held without bail. I told myself he was gone, locked away where he couldn't hurt anyone. But trauma doesn't understand logic. It was a Tuesday night, almost mirroring the night of the first argument. I woke up around 3 a.m. The room was pitch black, save for the faint moonlight filtering through the curtains. I felt a presence. You know that feeling when you know you're not alone? The hair on the back of my neck prickled. I sat up, blinking, trying to focus. Standing at the foot of our bed was a silhouette. It was him. It was Daniel.
He was wearing the same stained t-shirt he wore the day I confronted him. He was standing perfectly still, watching us. My heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. My vocal cords were paralyzed. "I told you," the silhouette whispered. The voice was like dry leaves skittering on pavement. "I told you you would regret this." As my eyes adjusted, I saw the glint of metal in his right hand. A kitchen knife. "Daniel, please," I choked out, my voice a pathetic squeak. "Don't." He didn't listen. He raised the knife. He stepped forward, pressing his legs against the mattress. I tried to scramble backward, pushing myself against the headboard, reaching for Gabby to wake her, to protect her. He lunged. The knife came down in a vicious arc. I screamed, a raw, tearing sound that ripped from my throat. And then I woke up. I was sitting bolt right in bed, drenched in sweat, my chest heaving like I had just sprinted a mile. The room was empty.
The moonlight was soft and harmless. Gabby shot up beside me, terrified. "Noah, what is it? What's wrong?" I couldn't speak for a full minute. I just gasped for air, scanning the room, expecting him to step out of the closet or the shadows. But there was nothing. Just the hum of the HVAC and the safety of our locked house. It was just a bad dream, I finally managed to say, though my voice was shaking uncontrollably. Gabby rubbed my back, soothing me until my heart rate slowed. She went back to sleep eventually, but I didn't. I sat there until the sun came up, staring at the bedroom door, waiting for the handle to turn. That dream is seared into my memory. It wasn't like other nightmares that fade when you pour your morning coffee. This one had weight. It had texture. I can still see the dull shine of the knife. I can still hear the specific cadence of his whisper. It felt like a visitation. I never told Gabby about the dream. She was already traumatized enough. She didn't need to know that I was seeing her murderer in our bedroom at night. I didn't want her to think I was cracking up. We didn't stay in that house much longer. We couldn't. Every time we pulled into the driveway, we looked at the house to the right. We saw the overgrown lawn, the dark windows, the ghost of the red velvet cake, and the screams. We got married a few months later and used it as an excuse to move to a different part of town. We found a nice place, far away from that street. The new neighbors are nice. They wave, they keep to themselves. But I don't eat red velvet cake anymore. And every time a neighbor is a little too friendly or a little too quiet, I feel that cold knot of fear in my stomach. It's crazy how you never truly know who people are behind closed doors. Daniel seemed like a friend. He was a monster. And some nights, when the wind blows just right and the house settles, I still hear that whisper in the dark. "You'll regret this."
And there you have it. That certainly makes you look at your own neighborhood a little differently, doesn't it? We all like to believe that our homes are our sanctuaries and that the people living just a few feet away are just like us. But as Noah found out, walls are thin and smiles can hide terrible secrets. Maybe tomorrow, when you see your neighbor grabbing the mail or taking out the trash, you'll wonder what's really happening behind their closed blinds. Or maybe it's better not to know. Sometimes, ignorance is the only thing that lets us sleep at night. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, keep your doors locked, and sleep well if you can. Good night.